When talking about competitiveness, there are a lot of different factors to be considered. For example, wages. These factor into how much something will cost as a result of production. For example, subsidies can be given by the national government, whereby a product or an economy can be helped because everything will become cheaper because there are less immediate expenses. For example, the EU wants to ban this because they think that it hinders uniform competitiveness, as some countries are able to subsidize different branches of business than others. Productivity also plays into account. For example, the book talks about a Polish and Danish person producing a chair, whereas the Danish person has a higher wage, they also produce 4 times as much. This means that the more productivity there is, the lower costs there will be, and thereby higher competitiveness. Supply and demand also, of course, have an influence, how much people want and how much there is. When there's high supply, then competitiveness will also be factored in because there isn't a lot of people who want to buy all of the products. Or a country won't be able to compete because there are so many other countries who also have the same products, perhaps even at lower prices. Demand also plays into account for the same reasons. Luck also factors into some accounts because it depends on, well, which countries are immediately around the other country and what possibilities the country has and which economic, political, social standing the company is currently in and what time they enter the market. Or if a company is taken into account, then luck also depends on how well they are able to brand themselves and so on. Institutional competitiveness, which we'll get into later with Maria, for example, includes education and infrastructure as a result or as a factor in competitiveness because they are things that help factor into how much people or countries will be able to produce and buy and sell and export. Currency also factors into account. For example, Denmark is based on the euro or has a relationship with the euro, which means that we have a stable currency exchange, thereby not affecting our imports and exports as drastically as if we had a floating currency exchange, because it would all depend on if the euro was at 6 or at 8, which would affect costs and buying and trading between companies or countries. Politics also play a factor. For example, with Russia, with Putin as a leader, a lot of people don't really rely on the Russian economy or Russian products because they fear what the political situation will affect on the economic situation. Structural competitiveness also has an effect because it depends on the justification of prices or justification of the product, with people including on their know-how and help, meaning how well is the consumer able to benefit from the product as a result of buying it. Price elasticity is again something that affects both low and high products, or expensive products and cheap products, and is a term to explain how well a product or an economy can adjust to different changes. So for example, during the financial crisis, price elasticity was shown to a drastic extent because some companies or economies weren't able to handle the extreme differences. And then quality, lastly, also has an effect because which is again subjective, but there is a somewhat dependent on the market shares. For example, Denmark has high market shares in some businesses, which means that quality is assumed to be high as well. When the quality is high, then it also affects the competitiveness because quality again factors into how much are people willing to pay or how much are people willing to be influenced in an economy or company in relation to how much they get out.
I'm going to talk about which policies can strengthen competitiveness, and there are in fact several policies that can strengthen competitiveness. And first of all, I'm going to talk about currency and income policies. And currency and income policies help making domestic products cheaper in relation to foreign currencies. Well, the effect, however, will depend on the price elasticity of the export. Especially countries with a deficit on the current account of their balance of payment will want to influence their wage competitiveness that was mentioned in question 1 through currency and income policies. Another policy that can strengthen competitiveness is the industrial policy, which aims to promote economic growth and employment. And that's done through influencing fundamental structures in various sectors in society. And the industrial policies are supply-oriented, which means that they aim to influence society's production capacity. And that's done in order to increase demand without it leading to increasing prices, which is the inflation, but to lead to a quick adjustment of supply. Other policies like monetary and fiscal policies are demand-oriented, which means that overall demand is adjusted in steps in connection to the economic development. And most European countries pursue what's called an active stabilization policy at the macro level, with the primary goal to provide the population with the highest possible level of welfare.
Question 4. Explain figure 18.5. Figure 18.5 shows the competitive rating of Denmark on a global level. The figure is divided into two different sections, and going from left to right, we have a column which is divided into 4 different areas and has a ranking and scoring system. The first 3 shows Denmark's competitive index on a global plan and its rating. So from 2006 till 2009, Denmark has been placed as the 3rd best country on the global competitiveness index, only beaten by the US and Switzerland. The next 4 show Denmark's rating on the basic requirements, which are set for a country's global competitiveness. This is and is shown by pillars. So the first pillar, institutions; second pillar, infrastructure; third pillar, macroeconomic stability; fourth pillar is the health and primary education. The average for this basic requirements rated by Denmark is 4 on a global ranking, with a score of 6.1. So this is just quickly explained the different pillars into the basic requirements, and then we have the efficiency enhancer, which is 6 different pillars, which is more advanced than the primary basic ones. So it's like labor market, market size, financial market sophistication, and then we have the last one, which is innovation and sophisticated factors. But all of this is what is then shown. All of this is shown on the last part of the figure, and the next part of the figure shows Denmark's different scores on a net in comparison to the average other innovation-driven economies. By taking a look at the net, we can see a clear pattern which puts Denmark above the average innovation-driven economies. Denmark has a higher score on almost all of the different factors except the market size, which is the only factor Denmark is lacking on. We can see that in general it's like in institutions the average one is 5, and Denmark is rated at above a 6. But the Danish market size is around only a 4.3, whereas the average one is around a 4.5, and this is because of the lack of Denmark being on a bigger global market. We don't have as much to prove on the global market as so in comparison to like the US, which it has a lot of big companies. They're a lot more driven into the on a global plan in comparison to Denmark. Yes, just to conclude all of this, it shows that all of these different pillars is the rating of how a country is seen on the competitive index, whereas Denmark is definitely above average on all the different pillars regarding the innovation-driven economies.